Hi all, welcome back to ITC561. Today we're going to look at topic 8, governance. Governance is a topic that's, I suppose, to a lot of techos, it's an area we really don't want to play with. It's something that, it's just there for management to do. But we have to have this governance procedure surrounding our processes. We put governance around our on-premise data stores and our services, and these are the things we use to ensure that management around them and the way in which they're managed works correctly. But once we move this to the cloud, will this still be adequate for these new cloud-based services? Now, what we find with organizations and enterprises is that they really are looking for these economic, strategic, operational benefits to come out of the move into cloud computing. But to maximize those, we have to ensure that the business drivers that the organization has identified as the reason to want to move to the cloud still align with the enterprise goals and objectives. And as such, we've then got to make sure that the projects are guided by management to ensure we get the value creation and the minimization of risk. This process is called governance, right? And let's have a look at how it works. Now, we'll start off, we've got three main readings of this topic, and they're all pretty interesting. The first one is the Osaka reading. This gives you quite a good overview of the governance questions. It gives you the basis to develop questions for your own organization. The second reading, the Ajimo reading, is a fairly old one now, 2012, and it was brought out to talk around hybrid clouds in a government environment, particularly community clouds. So it, at first glance, doesn't appear to be terribly useful, and I would suggest you browse through it. But the things that are useful in this reading are attachments 1 and 2. Attachment 1 gives the roles and responsibilities, and it's a very good example of how to apply governance principles and how to use those principles to apply them within your organization, because you can pick up that and basically transfer the names and roles, and you've got something that'll work for you. Attachment 2 is a really good example of how to use a checklist approach to ensuring your governance issues are covered. So even though it's fairly old, this is still very relevant, so it's worthwhile having a look, particularly at attachments 1 and 2. The final reading I've pulled from the current Digital Transformation Authority, a federal government authority, dated 2019, that shows the government's current approach to governance. Unfortunately, what this shows is that DTA is far more concerned with cost minimisation, security and process streamlining. And as we'll see, there's a fair bit more to governance than just those. So, in order to create a good governance framework, we need to ask management some questions. How do they plan to use the cloud? Have they assessed the value and opportunity costs? What are they looking to gain? Is it competitive advantage or improved products and services, increased productivity, develop new products? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We need to understand where this is going. What are the strategic plans? Because this can help us to create the governance structure that will work for the organisation. So, once we've got that, we can start to develop a framework for the organisation and its cloud services. And so normally we'll start with those strategic plans, as we've just looked at, and we'll consider those in the light of things like the risk assessment that we've done on cloud services, the enterprise information security policy. Then we'd start to look at process and workflow plans, as these will be could well be affected by cloud services and the way they're now going to be used. And so you may have to look at, as DTA points out, streamlining your processes or changing them in some way. One thing to note here is that cloud providers will also offer you governance, but they define it somewhat differently and much more narrowly than we would do. So normally what the providers are looking at by defining governance is the process of setting up security, organising resources and applying monitoring. Now, these are very, very important, but they really leave out most of the important aspects of governance from an organisational point of view. And we'll see this as we work through this particular topic. One of the things that's almost always left out in governance, particularly cloud governance, is data. Now, most organisations assume that data is going to be covered under either risk management or security or perhaps process and workflow. But the access to, the transformation of and the storage of data are usually some of the major reasons why the organisation decides to move into the cloud. So we'll look at including data as part of that governance framework. And we'll look at some basic data considerations that you can use that can be worked into an existing governance framework to improve it immensely. So how does all this fit together for you? Well, firstly, it allows you to meet a couple of learning outcomes. Able to identify and design an IT risk management strategy around cloud computing delivery plans, but also able to critically analyse business requirements to plan a cloud migration. So that's where it'll start to fit and meet those learning outcomes. It'll be of great assistance to you in completing assignment 4, where you're developing that report to the board that, amongst other things, discusses risk management controls, application resilience, DR and BCP, and administration of those proposed cloud services. And of course, it'll also probably be a question in the exam. But most importantly, this is information and knowledge that you'll be able to use in your workplace, probably constantly, as you're managing your enterprise's cloud deployment. If you've got any questions, as always, please consider raising them on the forum so everybody can see it, or raise it with your lecturer, and we'll attempt to get back to you as fast as possible. I hope you enjoy this subject. It sounds dull and dry, but it's actually quite an interesting one. See you all next week.